this is Mrs. Childers. And once again, I did not video class today, so I'm just going to go over a couple things with you. You see this editing practice 2 that hopefully you've uploaded, and we checked over this in class, and so I just want to go over how you would annotate. And we're going to start with number 6 here. Until his son Aries burst through the door, bloody and exhausted. So you should read that and go, that really can't stand alone. And the reason it can't stand alone is because it starts with a subordinating conjunction, until. Son is the subject, burst is the verb. All of this is prepositional phrases and adjectives. So this is one clause, but it's a dependent clause. It can't stand alone, therefore it's a fragment. So how would you correct it? You would just take the subordinating conjunction away. The son Aries burst through the door bloody and exhausted. Okay? Okay, let's look at number 2. Okay, the creatures had no fear, comma, they charged headlong at the god. And so if you look here, here's a comma that is where a period belongs. So that's called a comma splice, CS. Okay? So you've got the creatures had no fear, independent clause. They charged headlong at the god, independent clause. You can't join this with a comma. So there's a couple ways that you could change that. I did one of them here. I put a subordinating conjunction at the beginning. So that ties the dependent clause to the independent clause. Because the creatures had no fear, they charged headlong at the god. But you also could put a coordinating conjunction. You could say the creatures had no fear, comma, and they charged at the god. Or you could say the creatures had no fear, semicolon, they charged at the god. Or my favorite, the creatures had no fear as they charged at the god. That's a subordinating conjunction, no comma. Okay? So that was a run-on. This next one, oh my goodness, this was such a mess. So it's a compound complex. You can see that out to the side. I want to show you how I annotated it though. It helps me to go through and look at the subject-verb pairs and circle conjunctions and relative pronouns as I come to them. So there's my first subject verb, Dinos told. Dinos told Zeus. That stands alone, so I bracketed that. That's an independent clause. I come to that, and I know that that can be a relative pronoun. So I'm looking. Is there a subject verb after it? Sure, I've got all were. All were gods and goddesses. So there's my subject verb pair. Don't be fooled by family. Family is an object of a preposition. This would describe all, but all is your subject. Now it starts with a that. So this is a dependent clause, that all of his family were gods and goddesses. Then I come to a coordinating conjunction. I know coordinating conjunctions could join words or phrases or clauses. Let's see. Oh, it's got a subject-verb pair. So that is a coordinating conjunction with a subject-verb pair. If it starts with a coordinating conjunction, we bracket what comes after that, and it's independent. Dinos was told. And then we have another relative pronoun, followed by subject-verb, creations were left. And because it starts with a relative pronoun, that whole thing is a dependent clause. Now, I highlighted this little section at the end because what I want you to see is there's a lot of verbiage in there. To be, credited, making, okay, all of that is verbs. However, they're not being used as verbs. To plus a verb is going to be an infinitive, and making is going to be either a gerund or a, well, it's a gerund in this case, or a participle. So don't be concerned with those. You're looking for subject-verb pairs. So there's two independent clauses, two dependent clauses. Our definition of compound complex is at least one dependent clause and at least 2 independent clauses. If there's more, that's okay. It's still compound complex. Okay, here is our answer to number 3. And I circle, it's a complex. Oh, it's not number 3, it's number 9. So I circle Y. What's my subject verb pair? Others like, that's actually the verb. being is a gerund. Doesn't matter for your purposes. While others like being in Mount Olympus, I'm going to do parentheses. That's a dependent clause. And I have another subject-verb pair. He liked sitting in his cave alone. Does that stand alone? Yes, it does. So that's an independent clause, dependent. That makes this complex. Okay, and then we come to a nice, simple sentence. So Hades traveled. There's my subject-verb pair. And I come down here and there's a verb, but it's an ing verb. If it doesn't have a helping verb with it and it's ing, it's going to be a participle or a gerund. So we're going to ignore that. We have one independent clause that's simple. Okay, number 11, long sentence and it's compound complex. So kind of the same thing. I'm just going through subject-verb pair. Okay, and I bracketed that. Athena was furious. Circle the relative pronoun, and here's another subject-verb pair. Anyone would disrespect. Now we have an ing word, but it doesn't have a helping verb. That's going to be a verbal. It's actually a gerund. Okay, we come to so. There's a coordinating conjunction. She descended to earth. To investigate's an infinitive. This is an independent clause. That, oh goodness, who had banished is dependent. So we have two, it's hard for me to read this. Two independent clauses and two dependent clauses, compound complex. Okay, let me take it off for these last two. So this one is a run-on. There is only one crown, and I have it. No one can take it from me. You can see the independent clauses, and right here's where we have a problem. There's nothing combining. And so there's a couple ways you can rewrite it, but I wrote it here. I have the only crown, comma, and no one can take it from me. So I chose to get rid of there's only one crown, okay? But you could say there's only one crown, comma, and I have it, semicolon, no one can take it from me, or you could put a period there, or you could do a comma so. There's several ways, but you've got to have a conjunction. And then this last one is a run-on. Iris thought about it, then realized she could be both. Then is not a conjunction that can stand alone, and so you need an and. So Iris thought about it, comma, and then, and you really should have she realized she could be both. Okay, so this is hard work. I recognize that this is hard work, but we're going to keep editing, and I want you to keep annotating sentences because it will make your own sentences so much better. Okay, so a couple little gifts I gave you. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you a link to a PDF, and I want you to read this first page, and you can pause this, and you can see we actually annotated this. Remember, annotating is just a way of making notes to help us remember. So when we read this first part, we just did compound sentence, and I made the observation that this is an incredibly hard paragraph to read because of parentheses. So here's a rule for you in your writing this year. Don't use parentheses. Either the information is important enough to include without parentheses, or it's not important, so take it out. So I've underlined these 3 ways you can make compound sentences. We'll talk about complex, compound, complex another day, but then we come down and this unpacks each of these. One way is we can make a compound sentence created with coordinating conjunctions. And I wrote fanboys over here to remind me, or you might underline each of the conjunctions. You know this. You've been doing this a long time. And then a little bit newer, compound sentences created with a semicolon. So this is new, but I really want all of you to be using semicolons. They work to connect 2 independent clauses that are of equal significance and they're related. And then finally, this is the one I really want to talk about. Compound sentences are created with a conjunctive adverb and a semicolon and a comma. So look at this. That's a conjunctive adverb. So you could have an independent clause, the price of oil has risen sharply, semicolon. Then you start with a conjunctive adverb and put a comma after it. Okay. Now, the whole next page gives you a whole lot of details. And I don't really want to read through that. So I gave everybody this. And actually what's in red is what I'm going to have them add tomorrow. But this is a list of adverbial conjunctions. You can call them conjunctive adverbs. And in the past, you've probably used some of these words, like also, however, furthermore. These are transition words, and they play a really important role in your writing. So you want to keep this sheet in the writing portion. You're going to keep this sheet. And if you look at the back, we went over this. It tells you how to punctuate. And so look at that first line. When a conjunctive adverb connects two independent clauses in a sentence, it's preceded by a semicolon followed by a comma. Okay, and they give you an example. Tuition increases, say officials are driven by the university's cost, semicolon. And then conjunctive adverb, consequently, comma, tuition income typically covers less than 50%. Okay, so consequently is your conjunctive adverb. Now, conjunctive adverbs can be used in other parts of the sentence, but wherever it's used, it's set apart by commas. So right here, your conjunctive adverb is nonetheless. It's at the beginning of the sentence. So nonetheless, comma, some colleges are making efforts to trim budgets and pass along savings. Okay, or here's our conjunctive adverb in the middle of this sentence. Secretary Bennett, comma, however, comma. So these are really important conjunctive adverbs. And we're going back to this packet because we skipped to the exercises. We're working on how you can combine independent clauses. Oh, and I'm going to pick my phone up here and get this situated. Let me see. So I'm going to go over each one from each of the exercises. You're going to do exercises A through D, and you've got to pay attention to these directions. It says make the following sentences into one compound sentence using coordinating conjunctions and commas. You've got to use coordinating conjunctions. So right here, Bill loves hiking and camping. Bill loves canoeing best. You wouldn't say, you wouldn't put a subordinating conjunction in there. So here's how you would rewrite that. Bill loves hiking and camping, comma, but he loves canoeing best. When a word is used a second time in a sentence, you can replace it with a pronoun. Okay? So you're going to do that. You are going to write the sentences, rewrite them correctly in exercise A. Then we're going to come down here on B. And B, you're going to combine, oh my goodness, combine the two sentences using a semicolon. Remember, sentences combined this way need to contain ideas of equal importance. So this is pretty easy. I love ice cream. I love tomatoes and healthy food too. So where the period is, you're just putting a semicolon. Okay? And then you need a comma to set apart too. So B, you do not need to recopy. Just make changes to the sentence. And then C, you are going to fix the following fused sentences using a semicolon. Well, a fused sentences run-on. Run-ons are two complete sentences that are run together with no punctuation. So let's look at this first one. This is pretty easy. First clause, through history, money, and religion were closely linked. That's an independent clause. Put a semicolon after it. There was little distinction between government and religion. So two ideas closely related. Separate with a semicolon. Okay? So you are only correcting the sentences. Hello, the frog wants to say hello. And you are not rewriting B and C. Okay, next page. D, make the following sentences into one compound sentence using a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. So have this sheet next to you because you're going to figure out which adverb you want to use. So let's look at this first one. Martha Stewart is a celebrity. The fact that her television show is filmed at her house irritates her neighbors. So you would just look and go, well, what conjunctions would fit this over here? And it's hard to know, do people like her being a celebrity or not? So I said she's a celebrity, semicolon, however. But you could say, therefore, hence, thus. Okay? So you're picking something that makes sense. So come back over here. Martha Stewart is a celebrity, semicolon. However, comma, the fact that her television show is filmed at her house irritates her neighbors. Okay? So make sure that you're picking an appropriate adverbial conjunction. Now, I'm going to just tell you that these sentences are really, really long. So instead of rewriting this whole thing, you could say, however, the fact that her television show is filmed, ... Like you could take this last part out. And in fact, that's what I did here. I just did a ... So you don't have to write the entire second part of the sentence. Okay, here's your classroom. I hope that makes sense. I hope that both of you are coming back. And if you need some help, just pick a time to meet with me when you come back, okay? Thanks, bye.